Juniper Books presents The Luckiest Man in the World by Molly Cutpurse, narrated by John Crabtree PhD from his notes recorded at the time. Chapter 17.
29th of June, 2026. There was no doubt about it. I had seriously underestimated Caroline, and that could only be put down to my own swollen ego. An ego so inflated since I began to achieve success after success during the education phase of my life, that I, perhaps unconsciously, began to believe my own hype, that I was in possession of some sort of mathematical savant syndrome. I mention that with care, but there was no doubting that I certainly possessed a level of genius concerning numbers. Perhaps I exaggerate the savant part, but all the same, I knew I could calculate formula without using a calculator, even if I didn't possess the usual mental aspects of retardation. Perhaps I am a halfway type of savant, having an intriguingly narrow range of specialist abilities. Who can tell? I even had enough time on my hands, pardon the pun, to wonder if my mental condition was part of the reason why the man in white chose me in the first place. Certainly, I remain having an obsessive preoccupation with numbers, and had done so since I had been a child. However, the question of why me and not some other genius remains unanswered, and also makes me wonder if I am the only person that he bestowed this power onto. But, to return to Caroline. Her second appearance surprised me, just like last time. I was given no warning, and again she dismissed the soldiers with a wave of her hand. This time I stood to greet her. "Is it the weekend again?" "He has gone away for 2 nights. How are you?" "You mean in my head or my body?" "Your hand, specifically. Is there any sign that the transplant is being rejected? Any symptoms?" "Not that I'm aware of. They take blood every day, and I feel all right." "Why? Have you heard any different?" "Medical matters are not discussed with me, John, and the truth is that I wouldn't be able to tell a patient's chart from a monthly gas bill." "Good to know." "Well, you seem all right. Bright enough. God, they did a good number on your hand. Have you got sensation and movement?" Just for her, I held it up and wriggled my fingers, and then easily picked up my iPad. "Wow, that's fantastic. You can feel that?" "Apart from some itching, which tends to keep me awake at night, I should say that it's pretty much as functional as it was before. What surprises me is the short amount of time it's taken. When I was 16, I had an accident on my bike and smashed my wrist. This one, the whole one. And I was in plaster for 4 months. 4 months to knit them bones together. And now they've transplanted a whole hand and grew new bones. I really don't know exactly how long it's been, but try 15 days, and apart from the obvious scarring, if I was to wear gloves, I'm certain no one would guess. It's caused me to think a lot about what techniques and medicines they've been using, because I'm not that much of an expert. For 15 days to achieve all that, and it's like I've never lost it at all. Can you understand my suspicions? Maybe. All I can tell you is that my brother has brought in some pretty big names in the medical world, so maybe they are doing things that perhaps they wouldn't be allowed to do under normal circumstances. Like experimental anti-rejection drugs, perhaps? I can't say, John. Maybe. Have you thought much about what we talked about? I remember that you were elusive in the extreme, but now I realise that was for my benefit, considering what they've done. If you mean mentioning what they were intending to do, that would have properly freaked me out, so thanks for that. I couldn't say anything, John. It was necessary to keep you calm. Fair enough. So what now? You can't break me out of here, and I can't use the marks unless I want to destroy my family. What do you mean? In a nutshell, I gave her the basic facts concerning my dilemma, closely watching her expression, which changed from being preliminarily interested to genuine surprise bordering on horror as I mentioned her brother's purpose and what he intended to do to my family. I was somewhat comforted by the way she slowly lowered herself onto the chair. I take it you didn't know about this. Caroline shook her head. So that's why I've decided not to give in to him. If it takes the loss of my family to save the world from whatever the mad freak has in mind, then that's what I'm intended to do. I'm not going to help him at all, not even if my own life is in danger. I never thought I'd die a hero. Just what are you talking about, John? Weren't you listening? I'm not going to have anything to do with him, no matter the consequences. I still don't understand. Use the marks. And he'd kill a member of my family, or perhaps all four. No, I can't do that. If he's going to harm them, then it'd be through me taking non-action, not direct. I still don't see what the problem is. What part of cameras, artificial intelligence and algorithms don't you understand? He'll know if I go missing, and then his threat. That doesn't matter, John. Think it through. I have thought it through. But all she did was stare at me. But the penny in my brain still didn't drop. And here's where I realised I knew exactly what you were thinking previously. But still, I didn't get it. Oh, for God's sake, John. You may be some sort of genius, but if the marks work, then use them properly to your advantage. Leave here. Go back in time before this place was constructed and get to London and find your family. Then go to before you lost your hand, before your parents and sisters was put under surveillance, and take them to somewhere safe. I blinked 17 times as that obvious solution, now suggested to me so easily, brought hope. Really? What part of that was so difficult? So you disappear. My brother gets an alert. He does his zero thing, and the men who work for him find nobody. What's the problem? A child could have suggested that. What's the matter now? Nothing. I was just wondering why I hadn't thought of that. It's such an obvious answer. And so obvious. Why didn't he think of that? Does it matter? All you have to do is find out if the marks work, and then we can leave. We? John, currently we are in the wilds of Scotland. How long do you think it will take you to walk to London? I guess averaging, say, 4.83 kilometres an hour, and given, say, 1,000 kilometres, that would take around 28.75 weeks. And will you be able to last all that time without food? I remained silent. This thing can take two, can't it? Of course it can. I won't forget Fleet Street in a hurry. And I have abundant funds. Well? I admit I was struggling. Yes, she was right, and she had the means to help me. It's just that she was the sister of my enemy. So I was being led from the frying pan into the fire, as my grandmother was fond of saying. But really, what other choice did I have? I nodded. Why are you helping me? Because there is something that you can do for me. Is that a good enough reason? More silence. Are we doing this or not? You don't seem certain. I'm not certain. I'm not certain at all. Well, why don't you try the marks out and see? And then at some point, I'll tell you what I want. You haven't forgotten how those things work, have you? No, it's not that. But when do you want to try it? Well, today would be a good idea. This moment, unless you're busy, I've got another appointment somewhere else. Are you ready for it then? I have everything I need with me, John. Okay. Hold on to my arm. I'm going to go backwards 10 years. Better make it 80. Maximilian's been using this place for one thing or another for years. It was actually built during about 1950, during the Cold War, I think. Better not ask. I wasn't going to. God, a pot of money and extreme power do not go together, do they? After Caroline had taken hold of my arm by looping hers through mine, I turned my attention to the marks and took a deep breath, holding that whatever amazing technology that prevented a person from travelling, from materialising in solid objects was still working. Momentarily, I felt like a Renaissance man about to set fire to a chemical he's just discovered, hoping that it wouldn't kill him. Gently, I pressed the marks, holding the date in my mind. Then after Caroline and I had exchanged a rather long look, and for a second I noticed once again how beautiful and striking she was, I pressed the mark that I knew would initiate the process. 1st of June, 1946. I suppose in my heart I hadn't expected it to work. So when I recognised the sequence of bright flashes of light, I briefly felt a combination of elation and surprise as the physical world instantly dissolved and merged with one that was entirely different. We immediately began to get drenched because the area was undergoing a rainstorm, and the fact that we had materialised about half a metre above the ground didn't help, as our fall was akin to unconsciously stepping off a pavement. The fact that we hit the hard ground with a thump, causing us both to give a loud yelp. However, that was the least of her trouble, at least, as disengaging herself from me, she bent double and began to vomit loudly, and at length causing me to put my arm over her shoulder as some form of comfort. This continued for well over a minute, and we both were becoming soaked, being so exposed. Finally she stopped retching and stood upright, her once neat hair blowing in all directions. "Caroline, you all right? Christ, what was that about? You must have kept your eyes open." "Really? That's the reason? It didn't happen before?" "I don't know what to tell you, honestly. I couldn't remember experiencing such a strong buffeting gale, and the rain was so fierce that it was almost hitting us sideways. I estimated 85 degrees to the vertical. I heard Caroline mutter some common rude word in French before she, like myself, began to scan the surrounding area. In my head, I was thinking Scotland, a land of mountains, lochs and greenery. But what we saw was nothing like that, because after only a cursory glance it was obvious we were standing in an open quarry, a decent enough reason why the ground had been so hard. The rain was hitting us with such force that the cliff edges were difficult to see, and then only because of the flashes of lightning that we were so close that they were instantly accompanied by rolls of such immensely loud thunderclaps that it was frightening. Within minutes, both my shirt and jeans and Caroline's fancy light coat was wringing wet. It was she, though, who spotted our temporary saviour, a small wooden flat-topped building not too far away, and putting our heads down we struggled towards it, only to find it locked with a padlock. But at least now we were sheltered from the ridiculously powerful sideways wind. Of course, me being polite, the middle-class man I was, I knocked, not giving a thought as to how or why a person would be able to lock themselves in. "Get a rock, smash it." Under normal circumstances, I would have given her a withering look, because smashing locks was not the way I dealt with things. But as these were far from normal circumstances, I nodded, and seeing a lump of granite about the same size as my fist, I grabbed it. After a third blow, the metal yielded, and we pushed our way in to find it was an office. There was a wooden table, 2 chairs, a number of small wooden crates, and a metal paraffin heater, which was, of course, cold. Pinned to the walls were a number of office-relatable items, such as a calendar and a schedule for a dozen names. Every time there was a flash and a rolling crack of thunder, everything seemed to tremble, or at least vibrate. Around the perimeter of the 2 by 2 metre shed were those box crates, and I saw that 3 of them were labelled dynamite, which I simply stared at the same time as bringing Caroline's attention to them by nudging her. Carefully, I lifted up the lid on the topmost one and grimaced as I counted at least 15 brown sticks with more beneath them. "Okay, so it appears we are in a quarry. I don't care where we are, John, as long as we're out of that rain. So your brother built whatever he built in an abandoned quarry." "What? No, he didn't build B2. How could he? He's not that old." "Sorry, wasn't thinking. B2? It's just a name given to it. It was actually built by Labour government for interning those hostile to the UK back in the day. The name implies that it was not a solitary building. Correct on that. John, where are we? Or should I say, when are we?" I inputted the first convenient date that came to mind after deducting 80 years from 2026. Currently, it's the 1st of June, 1946. Do you feel better now? Slightly. Dry heaving is not my favourite pastime. Why did that happen? That didn't happen in Fleet Street. No, it didn't, did it? Something else to look into, I suppose. Christ. Well, we can't stay here, can we? I'd rather the rain eased before we left. That's not what I mean. John, my money won't work here. Nothing I have will work here, and we still have to get to London. Hey, look at my watch. It's going mad trying to find a signal. I glanced at her expensive timepiece. Yeah, I've seen that effect before. So shall I move us on a month or wait until the rain stops? Maybe wait? What if the reason this place is so empty is because of the storm? I wouldn't like to be here when there are workers about. Okay, let's wait then, and hope the dynamite doesn't explode if the shed is hit by lightning. Maybe we should put those boxes outside? Caroline, that won't do any good unless we drag them about 100 metres away. There's enough here to bring down a block of flats. Not that I'm any sort of an expert concerning explosives, but if they are dry, that amount will ruin our day. I don't think there will be any part of us left to find. Then what? Do you know when this B2 was built? No. All right. It's 1946. The war's just ended. The Cold War is about to hot up. Let's try another 2 years. And if there's anybody there, I'll just try and move us along as soon as I can. Take my arm. And what about being sick? Try closing your eyes. 1st of June 1948. We reappeared to find ourselves enveloped by warm sunshine, while a completely cloudless blue sky was a joy to see. Especially for me, as I hadn't seen this sky for God knows how long. No shed, no dynamite, and no people. Just us, in the centre of a huge hole composed of jagged blue-grey rocks, with Caroline dry heaving again. Like the last time, she continued this until she felt well enough to stand upright. I gave her a concerned look as she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and took deep gulps of fresh Scottish air. To my surprise, she grabbed my arm again, and we stood still, our clothes pretty much wringing wet. When she spoke, she sounded exhausted, and her eyes were red and watery. What's the year? Same date, 1948. That's still no good, John. They won't take my credit card here. For some unnamed reason, I smiled at her little joke. Or perhaps it was not a joke, and she was just scared and exhausted, blurting out the first thing that came into her head. I'm not joking. Sorry. Yeah, we're about 30 years too early. I think by 1990 should be okay. God, I'm soaking. John, we'll have to be careful. It's no good going to a 1990s bank with my card. I mean, the date will be a bit of a giveaway. Who are you with? Principally Barclays. That's my main one. And when did you start with them? 2017, on my 16th birthday. So, of course, you would have funds deposited in it. Can I ask how much? Not much. About 3,000, I think. Oh, okay. So let's go to a Barclays then. Go to 2018, withdraw enough for 2 train tickets, get to London, and then go to before I had my accident. Sound good? Sounds fine, except for one thing, and that is, I haven't a clue where we are. But you visited this B2 place. Yeah, but I don't drive there. We have a jet which takes us to an airport, and one of the helicopters brings us here. We don't even walk. A car takes us to the last few 100 metres or so. No idea at all. Sorry, no. All I know is that it's in Scotland and it's isolated, that's all. So it's an abandoned quarry. Oh, okay. So I guess we'll do it the hard way. Right, there's the sun. It's in the south, so we begin walking towards it. It'll set in the west sometime after 10 this evening, so we need to keep walking, keeping it to our right, and that means we'll be walking south. But we can't walk 500 miles, John. You know, one thing at a time. Sooner or later we'll see a signpost or speak to someone. You don't have any jewellery on you, do you? That ring looks fancy. Caroline lifted up her slim but wet hand and the jewels sparkled in the sunlight. Yeah, that looks real. Does it mean much to you? It was my grandmother's. It's 3 carats, set in platinum. How much is 3 carats? You mean how much is it? In money? I don't know, but it's insured for about 5,000. Jesus. And you wear it like a common piece of jewellery. Have you got anything else? There's this. Caroline reached behind her head and unhooked a chain, which she then suspended before me. Hanging from it was a thick, plain cross, and it twinkled in the sun. It's the purest silver, 99.9%, and I paid just over 300. Do you mind losing it? No, that's okay. Better to lose this than my ring. Come on, let's make a start. Let's get out of this crater at least. Wait, hold on. What? Well, look at us. We can't walk about like this. What other choice we have? Okay, look, if we go back, say, to when this place was working, that shed might have something that we might be able to wear. No, I'm not going somewhere where I don't have to go. Let's just get to our proper time. Being that sick is frightening. Then just stay here then. If I do it right, and you will hardly know I've gone, I'll be away about 1 second. We can't walk about looking like this, Caroline. We have to do what works to avoid, I don't know. 1 second? I promise. Look, see this mark? I call it my home button because it always returns me to where I come from. I will literally be away about 1 second. For Christ's sake, don't be longer than that. Okay then, I promise. Now you stay right here and I'll step away where the shed's going to be. The last thing we need for anybody is to see me arrive, or disappear for that matter. Now 1 second, I promise. Caroline vanished as quickly as the shed appeared again, but although I was in 1944, there was not a sign of anybody working. No men and no machines, just a bloody great hole in the ground surrounded by fir trees. So back yet another year and to another hot summer, and this was better. The shed door was wide open, and a powerful steam-powered crane was crunching rocks, I suppose. There were about half a dozen men standing around it. I darted into the shed and was rewarded by the sight of several dark waterproof coats, and not even bothering to look at sizes, I grabbed two and then noticed the paperwork on the desk. Stuffing the coats under my arm, I picked up a sheet of headed notepaper, and the top read, "Iron of Poron." Well, that's something. And I stuffed that in the pocket of my jeans. I was about to return when I saw what appeared to be a local map held on a cork board by 6 pins. Why I noticed that there were 6, I had no idea, but so intent was I at getting out before I was discovered that I simply tore it away and folded it badly. It was then that the shed darkened considerably, and I looked towards the door, which was where most of the light was coming from, and I saw the outline of a man as tall as the opening, hugging everything I had stolen to my chest. All I had time to see and hear was the man taking a step towards me and the words, "What the?" before he vanished. And when in 1944 I had to press the home mark again to return me to 1948, where I found an extremely distraught Caroline who rushed towards me. "That was longer than a bloody second. Where have you been?" That wasn't long. I had to go back further than I imagined, and I left some poor man with a story to tell his grandchildren. But look, coats and a map, and I have a place name. Don't ever do that to me again. You scared me to death. I thought you wasn't coming back. Well, I'm here now. Let's look at this map, and this is what I found on the desk. However, uncovering where exactly we were did not make me feel any better. As far as I could see from the 1 to 10 inch map, if there was a more isolated spot in the Highlands, then where we were ran a close second. Poron was a place name, but what it actually was, if it was a village or a town, we had no way of knowing. All I could work out was that it was the nearest civilized place, and after a brief discussion, we pulled on the waterproofs and with some effort scrambled up the least vertical slope we could see, only to find ourselves surrounded by tall firs as far as we could see. Beyond those were grey, steep mountains covered in mist. Indeed, the forest seemed to almost stretch to the horizon, except for a break in the trees a short way off, and we walked towards that. I figured that it had to be a road of some description, or by what other means would they have been able to extract all that rock? And I was right, for we came across a wide causeway constructed of rocks. As we passed between thousands of tall and silent trees, we chatted. "This coat stinks of body odour." "Mine too. But remember where we are, Caroline. You'll give some old chap a heart attack if you flash that amount of leg about." You know, I'm beginning to think this is not such a good idea. I think we ought to have tried the future, and I could have called for a helicopter. I wonder if you would have still been sick. Has not happened to anybody else? That boy? Jennifer? My brother? Not that I can remember. I wonder why it happened to you. Speaking of which, so I'm thinking that you have no great love for your brother? That's an understatement, John. She stopped walking. Look, would you mind if we didn't talk about him? Okay, if that's what you want. It's not that I want to be rude, but if I'm honest, coming clean, this is the main reason I helped you in the first place. I would like my step-brother to be taken somewhere where he can't do any more harm. That's what I want to ask you. You see, being the eldest and male, he was the one who got everything. Now he runs the family fortune. He decides what's going to happen and who's going to live or die. Excuse me? Never underestimate him, John. You are aware that he has half the government in his pocket, or so he likes to brag. and I can tell you that he is into some very shady goings-on in several underdeveloped countries. Never trust him. If he ever gets to understand the technology that you've got, then heaven help us all. He'll be like Hitler, Stalin, and every other tyrant that you can think of rolled into one person, who, on the surface, looks and behaves like cotton candy, but underneath he's rotten and would take you out as soon as you look at you. Do you know that he's got a live-in man? I've been to his flat in London, and yeah, I saw a man there. He cooked the best lamb I've ever tasted. Charles, I think, a butler. We began walking again. That man is no normal butler. He's a personal bodyguard who always remains close to him, even when it appears Maximilian's on his own. Don't trust him either. He's got a history. What sort of history? What sort do you think? I have no intention of trusting anybody. That's if we get back. I thought you didn't want to talk about him. He just makes me so mad. You realise that your life won't be your own when he knows you've gone. And that goes for me as well. In his time, we are already being hunted. Not that he can do anything about it, because he must realise that we've gone to some other time. I expect so, Caroline. Look, all we can do is try and stick what we agreed, which is to save my family first and then deal with your brother. Once in London, we need to return to the 28th of March, 2026, which is the day I lost my hand. I'm unlikely to forget that day. It's the first thing we have to do. I wish I knew why you kept being sick. We might have to do some dodging about, that's all. In what way? Well, look, this place we're heading towards, as far as I can tell, it's about at least 20 kilometres from Inverness. We can't walk that. And can you imagine the trouble explaining who we are to a load of country people living in 1948? There might not even be a road leading to Inverness. But if we go to, say, 2015, we'll have a better chance of getting a lift at least. At least we can say we got lost walking. Oh, I'm going to regret this, but why wait until then? Let's do it now. Go to 2015 and we might even be able to pick up a lift to Porrin. At least my mobile will work then. Are you sure? No? Caroline passed her arm through mine and closed her eyes. Just do it before I change my mind. Carefully, I touched the marks, and after a series of shuddering changes in the light levels, nothing seems to have changed. I looked at Caroline, who still had her eyes closed. We're here. You all right? She cautiously opened her eyes. Are you sure? Why aren't I being sick? I wonder if it's because we've gone forward. No, I know. It's because I had my eyes fully closed. That was like an extreme form of seasickness. I had my eyes open before. Oh, thank God for that. Hey, nothing's changed. Yeah, you're right. Or perhaps the trees are a bit higher. Wait a minute. Caroline took out her mobile and stared at the screen. Oh, got a strong signal. 5 bars. Yes, we are here. The clock's rewriting itself. 14th of July, 2015. Wow, I'm 14 years old here. It's hardly surprising that the Wi-Fi is so strong. Let's not forget what's now in that quarry. And not to mention that any cars that get here have to probably use this road. With that on our mind, we walked on resolutely in the direction of Porrin, keeping as close to the trees as possible. But during that journey, no vehicle passed us at all. Mostly we walked in silence, punctuated by periods of talking about ourselves in an effort to make the time go quicker. With the help of Caroline's map app, we had finally tramped through a dense wood. By the time we reached Porrin, the light was fading, but even through the twilight we could see the place was smaller than we had imagined. It was hardly even a village, just a road that passed half a dozen houses. However, there was one bit of luck, and that was noticed by Caroline, and she pointed to a bus stop. But both of us intuitively knew that no more buses were likely to be going to Inverness that time of the day. As we stood outside a typical tough old Scottish building that we could see was a primary school, there wasn't anybody about at all. Come on, we got to try one of these houses. What else can we do? Reluctantly, I agreed, and just a few metres along was a more modern one, surrounded by a richly planted front garden. Together we approached its front door, but before we reached it, a man called out from the side, and his thick accent didn't sound all that friendly. And when we saw him, he didn't look all that friendly either. "Who are ye? What do you want?" Caroline took the lead. "Sorry to trouble you, but we're stuck. We've broken down, and we need to get to Inverness." "So why are you knocking at my door?" Because we see there's a bus stop. Can you tell us what time's the next one, please?" "No more buses today. Next bus going there is 9 in the morning, one a day." "Oh, so be off with ye." I wondered if you'd like to buy this. It's pure gold and worth at least 300. We don't have any money and we have to get to Inverness." Caroline was holding up the cross, and we could see him staring at it. Slowly he moved towards us until he was about a metre away. He was a shaggy old thing. He had a huge reddish beard tinged with grey and wore a thick black jumper tucked into a pair of dark trousers and some very old Wellington boots caked with mud. He ran his eyes over us with suspicion. "Did you steal that?" "No, it's mine. My family's wealthy, thank you very much." "What do you want for it? That is, if I mind to help ye." "The price of 2 tickets for the bus, that's all." "Kennedy, what are you doing? Who are you talking to?" A stout, grey-haired woman appeared alongside the man, and her presence momentarily silenced us. The woman clipped the man on his shoulder, and he cowered a little. "Get back to work. Who are these people?" "Sorry, we broke down and I just wanted to know about the bus going to Inverness." "And what did my idiot brother say?" "Oh, sorry, we've got no money, and all we've got is this gold cross, which I thought we could exchange for a price of a couple of tickets. Sorry, we didn't know. I thought he was the owner." "The owner? And pigs could fly." "It's gold you have there?" "Solid gold. I paid £300 for it." "Did you steal it?" "No. Why does everybody keep asking me that? Do I look like a thief?" Caroline turned to me and I shook my head. "It's real. Feel the weight if you don't believe me." She walked towards us holding the same suspicious look as her brother, and her chubby hand took the cross and amateurishly weighed it by moving her hand up and down before offering us a weak smile. "What are you doing out here?" "Our car broke down and we've been walking for hours. Can you help us?" "Aye. I'll give you the money for 2 fares for this. Did Camden tell ye that there won't be one till 9 tomorrow morning?" "He did, yeah." "So night's coming on. What are you going to do?" "We hadn't thought that far ahead. Wait for it, I suppose." "In the dark. Have you eaten?" "Not for some time." "If we can have a glass of water, please." "Och, follow me. Camden, did I not tell ye to get on? My bloody simple brother ought to have been drowned at birth. Follow me to my kitchen." Camden crept off and disappeared into what looked like the house's back garden, and we cautiously followed the woman into her house, where I think we were both surprised at how clean, modern and spacious her kitchen was. I say modern, but changed my mind when we were invited to sit at a table that was covered with worn formica, and a hideous colour it was too. After introductions, Mrs. Aday offered us a warmed-up bowl of what she called tatty soup, which was not to my liking, but the roll that accompanied it was some of the best bread I ever tasted. I had expected the inside of the house to be substandard, and I think we were both surprised at all the modern white goods. "Are ye married?" That caught us off guard, and we both spluttered, "No." So then began a frank exchange of information about what we were doing in the Highlands, and we lied our faces off. Mrs. Adair listened to us, and I'm certain she didn't believe a word of it, yet she made no comment. Instead, she offered us a place to stay. We've a granny flat at the back, where our mother stayed until she passed. God rest her soul. You can sleep there. It's small, but one can use the bed and the other the couch. You won't be disturbed. She wasn't kidding about the size of it, for as we approached it from the outside, just as stars were beginning to appear, we discovered that it was a one-storey building crudely attached to the main house, and the construction of it left a great deal to be desired, for the outside was composed of a hodgepodge of discoloured used bricks and local stone, which had not been faced, and therefore looked like the sort of building that a drunken bricklayer might have constructed. The inside was no better, for the walls too had been left bare and was plain and unadorned. The windows had not been put in properly, and the edges between the frame and the bricks had had newspaper stuffed in between them to keep out draughts. Even the plasterboard, of which the ceiling was composed, had not even been painted. Moreover, to our disappointment, inside it consisted of only one room and a toilet, and in that one room was a single bed and the dreaded couch. Nevertheless, we thanked Mrs. Adair, and by the time it was becoming truly dark, we had settled on our street sleeping arrangements. Caroline was to have the bed, although the sheets and blankets were so filthy that she didn't undress and elected to sleep on top of them, while I took the couch and attempted to get settled, but the stink of urine and dog was so strong that I preferred the floor and the scrape of thin carpet, using my own arm as a kind of pillow. We were both glad it was summer, as there were no heating. I could only imagine how cold it could get during the winter months, and Caroline knew what I meant when I spoke about it, as she smoked, and I wished I had my vapour pipe. Do you think her old mother died from hypothermia? This place is disgusting. You wouldn't raise a pig in here, let alone put a parent. I wonder where the two of them sleep. Probably together, do you think? That's repulsive, John. Your mind. But I know what you mean. In the dark, I could tell she was smiling, though, but I shook my head. Just what are we doing here, Caroline? Mad, is it? Me with what I can do, and you, heir to a fortune? I hope you haven't forgot what you said you can do. I hadn't forgotten, although exactly how that's going to be achieved, I hadn't figured it out yet, especially now that the situation has been made clearer to me, knowing a bit more about his butler come bodyguard. We'll think of something. I never asked you for this, Caroline, but are you, or have you ever been married? Married? Me, at my age? You have to be joking. What made you ask that? I don't know. We've never connected on any emotional level, have we? Is there any need to? It's just that when we first met, that accent you put on and that story fooled me completely. John, remember? I have no memory of that. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Weird. Sorry. But I have trained as a linguist, and I can speak, read and write in 5 languages, so I guess I'm going to use what comes naturally to me. Caroline, what? There is something I don't understand about that. You told me outside that mini market shop, remember? That the reason you sought me was because Maximilian could be very persuasive. Okay. So how do you know how to find me that day outside bank statement? Caroline never replied, and I lifted my head and looked in her direction, which was a useless thing to do as we were now in almost complete darkness. "Caroline? Go to sleep, John. I'm tired. I'll explain tomorrow." God, I could do with a G&T right now. I don't know about you, but I definitely could do with a joint. Because of the near darkness and the almost constant noise of loud and, to me, strange nocturnal creatures, it took a time to sleep. But there was no problem waking up, as we were both awoken at the same time by the petrol-driven roar of a lawnmower. It was Caroline who reacted first, and she walked to the only window.
You have been listening to an audio production of The Luckiest Man in the World by Molly Cutpurse, narrated by John Crabtree PhD.